So let's just remind ourselves what the mandala is. Don't just do it as a ritual. Of course, it's very Tibetan, but it's got great meaning. It's basically it's making an offering to the Buddha as a request. It's sort of like we all know. I think it's very simple. When we go to visit somebody, you'd never go empty-handed, would you? You always bring a gift. So it's very auspicious. And if certainly. So anyway, this is what we're doing here. So it's we visualize, we understand the Buddha's cosmological views. We visualize the mandala, as they say. If not, just think of all the marvelous things in the world that make people happy, the things of our world, and sort of imagine piling them all up. And as Lama Zopa would say, as big as possible. And then we imagine offering it to the Buddha as a request for the teachings.
Sashi perki juk sing meto Dramri rablingji ni dek yen padi Sange jing du me tu wai Doku nam da xing la che pak xiu Jetsun lama dam pa ke nam Ki che ki ka la Kien se chu chin tri, di cha sam pe dul se sin ma la, sap ge chu ki cha pa, vap tu so, idam guru ratna mandala kam niyatsayami.
All right. So this two parts to this prayer. It's good to remind ourselves what we're saying. The first two lines are for those of us who already kind of identify as Buddhists, think it that way. So we're kind of really just reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And then the second two lines are stating an altruistic motivation or purpose or goal for why we're here together to listen to these teachings and do this meditation. So we think in this most altruistic way, as the words say, from the merits, from all the virtuous karma we create from listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha to be a benefit to all suffering sentient beings. So we're thinking like that. That's the concept of bodhicitta. So we make that our motivation. So we can. That's so. This in first time in English. So I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, and then by the virtuous karma I create from listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha to benefit all suffering sentient beings. Sangye chadang tsoke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye chadang tsoke chognam la jancho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok. Okay, happy to see you all. All right. So, well, first of all, this practice, it's a mixture of the sutra teachings and the tantric teachings. The classical teaching about karma, of course, is right there at the very beginning of our teachings in the sutra practices. It's in fact, the very first teaching, essentially the very first teaching, really, or if you like, if you take this Tibetan Buddhist packaging of the teachings that we refer to as the Lam Rim, the essence of all the points in the very first level are this one. This it's presenting this view of the Buddha from his own direct observation. Remember, not some kind of belief, but his own direct observation that this natural law of cause and effect, referred to, shorthand for this is the word karma, this natural law, as far as Buddha is concerned, that effectively runs the universe. More specifically, runs the minds of all sentient beings, really, is the way to put it. It's important for us to remember it's a natural law. I always have to point these things out. I think it's important because if we've come from a Christian background or a Jewish background or a Muslim background, then these teachings could seem very similar. They could be quite familiar to us. But there's a radical difference, and this takes us time to, I think, really to process. We tend to hear this as a variation of what we heard already, which is coming from the religions that posit a creator, posit of an outside source. Well, there's no concept like that in Buddhism. Buddha, in fact, that's where he diverged from the Hindus. Even though the Hindu tradition that Buddha was brought up in, this phenomenal genius yogis and scholars, they're the ones who already observed karma. They're the ones who understood attachment. They're the ones who observed the various realms of existence, these genius, extraordinary yogis. And even though they posit this law of karma, they still have this view of an intrinsic, self-existent, inherent, absolute, existent external force. Even though they still even have teachings about non-duality, from the Buddhist perspective, it's still a dualistic view that there's this inherent energy out there. We can call it God. In Christian teachings, we definitely call it God. In the Muslim teaching, we call it God. And the way we hear these teachings is as that God is the boss, God runs the show. And so when we hear about do this and don't do that, we hear that there are consequences to actions. We can't help but hear it as punishment and reward. And this, in fact, is the dualistic view that we have, even if we're materialists. We have a very strong view, the sort of the world out there, mummy, daddy, the police, the judge, there's somebody out there running the show who punishes us and rewards us. And you could say this entire view that incorporates even attachment and anger, which is coming from the view of self-existence, is completely pervades the minds of all beings. This is the key teaching that Buddha would suggest, is that what keeps us in samsara is in fact the cause of samsara. So it's on this point that actually Buddha diverged in his own direction. He said, there is no intrinsic external force, and indeed there is no internal intrinsic force called a soul or a spirit or an atman. So this is the point at which Buddha diverged. So when we understand that Buddha has, in one sense, this radically different view, although on the face of it, it can sound very similar, this radically different view, and that is that we create ourselves, that we are the source of our own happiness and we are the source of our own suffering. This is the fundamental view that Buddha has, which totally contradicts any concept of an external punisher and rewarder, creator. This is the point, really, and this is where he diverged, and this is based on the teachings on emptiness. So this concept of cause and effect, which is one of the first, actually, the concept of cause and effect. When we look at the teachings about emptiness, which are what everything are leading to, the final stages of the entire Lam Rim, is the teachings on emptiness, realizing emptiness. There are Lord Buddha teaches 3 levels of dependent arising, 3 levels at which things exist in dependence upon various factors, which, as Tsongkhapa says, and paraphrasing him by paraphrasing Lama Yeshe, dependent arising is the king of logics to prove emptiness. Then the very first level of dependent arising is, in fact, cause and effect. In other words, and this is a brilliant method, actually, when we really start to understand it, for kind of loosening the grip of ego grasping, starting at the very first level of practice by abiding by the laws of karma, which means I am the person who creates myself, therefore I don't want suffering, so I must stop doing negative actions, and I do want happiness, so I must also create virtuous actions. What underpins our wish to be a good person isn't the fear that we'll be punished or the wish to be rewarded, which is the instinctive view of ego. But when we understand that's the first level, it's the first level of dependent arising that would prove emptiness, that in fact there is no intrinsic I. So already abiding by the laws of karma, taking on board the concept of karma, is a brilliant way to help us realize emptiness. It's a starting point, actually. So let's look at it from that point of view, but also from the explicit point of view of being the very starting point in our practice of Buddhism, So Buddha's whole point, Buddha's entire path, is based on his observation, his own experiential findings about what suffering is and what causes it. And amazingly, his direct experiential findings from having done the job himself, that we can be free of suffering and its causes. He's telling us he's found a method. He's found a method. He says, guess what, guys? I have found a method to stop suffering, and not only to stop suffering, but to stop the causes of it, which is the crucial point, So he presents this in the Four Noble Truths. That's his very first teaching, really. And that is where we learn about karma. His very first teaching in Varanasi, after he became enlightened in Bodh Gaya and then found his way, walked his way to Varanasi, where he bumped into his very first group of disciples from years before. And he gave his very first teaching. And that's essentially the wisdom wing of the Buddha's teachings. It's essentially the teachings that we share with the Hinayana path. It's the first and second scopes of the Lam Rim. There is suffering, and there are three levels. There are causes, the second of the Four Noble Truths. You can be free. There is a state of cessation of suffering and its causes. Nirvana, the cessation of suffering and its causes. And then the fourth one is the method of how to do it. So the crucial one is the second one. There are two main causes of suffering. There are two main causes of suffering. And they're both inside oneself. And this, of course, is already getting us directly, jumping in the deep end of Buddha's view that we are the cause of ourselves. As His Holiness says, karma is basically self-creation, So Buddha's giving the advice. He says, Buddha's saying, I recommend you do this and don't do that. So normally when we hear that coming from a creator, we assume that we must not do those actions because we will get punished. And this is such a huge view, and I repeat it all the time. It's so important to hear it. That is the Christian teaching. For example, the Christian teaching. By definition, I always quote this endlessly. You must have heard me say it many, many times, but it's a really crucial point to keep remembering because it informs our way of using Buddha's teachings. It informs our relationship with the Buddha, So Jesus says, don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on the wrong partner. He's very similar to the Buddha. He's got a little list of 10 don'ts, and so has the Buddha. So you ask Jesus, why should I not kill? And he will say, the answer is because God said. Now that is perfect. If you have faith in a creator, which is the Christian teaching, then he is the source of the universe. He did make the world. He does run it. He created the rules, and he will punish you if you don't do his wish, and you will be rewarded if you do. And that's putting it in very simple terms, and there's nothing wrong with that. And this is my priest friend said basically what defines something. This is such a powerful point. It blew my mind when I heard it. It's so profound, the meaning and the implication, and especially when we hear the Buddha's view, which is a different one. That from the Christian point of view, and indeed any creative religion, something is wrong because God said it is wrong. So doing God's will is what defines something as a virtuous action, finally, and not doing his will, going against his will, is the definition of a sin. So this is incredibly powerful. Now, we hear it all like that, because we just want to be good girls, and we do what mummy says, and it's wrong because mummy said, and it's wrong because the judge said, and it's wrong because God said, or Buddha said, or the police say. That's the dualistic view we all have, We're like children. No, you ask Buddha, why is killing wrong? And he'll say, guess what, folks? It's a natural law. Have you observed that people don't like being killed? And that, for the Buddha, is what defines it as a negative action. This is a tremendously important point. And it's the implication is that Buddha is simply being an advisor and telling us from his own experience that he has found that killing and stealing and lying and jumping on the wrong partner, in other words, doing actions that harm others, which are actions that are based on attachment, anger, and the rest, that those actions will leave a seed in our mind that will ripen as our future suffering. And that the very way we do the action and what motivates the action, they are the very components that cause it to be a negative action because it sows seeds in our mind. So there's two things here. One, he will define killing as wrong because it harms others. But two, he suggests we don't do it at the very first level, not because it harms others. That's called compassion, and that's more advanced. He exhorts us not to do it at the very first level because he says it will harm you, Robina. And this is where we have to understand the way karma works. It's not merely just you're a naughty girl and you'll get punished. Not like that. That's just not like that. That's not like that. It's a fundamental kind of organic thing, you know, that the Buddha's saying that whatever goes on in our mind and whatever we do with our body and speech on the basis of what goes on in our mind is the very process that produces the person we become. That whatever goes on in our mind and what we do with our body and speech based on what goes on in our mind is the very process that produces the person we become. As His Holiness says, karma is self-creation. This is such it's such a delicious view, you know, but we have so much other stuff junk on top of it, we just can't hear it so simply. We hear it as punishment. We hear it based on fear. We hear it as punitive. We hear it as heavy. It's so deep in our bones to do that, you know. But what's so fascinating to me, and I want to say it here again, is actually we totally understand this principle when it comes to becoming a musician, an artist, a cook, a carpenter, a mathematician, you name it. And hear my words. Hear my words exactly. I will say them again. That in relation to you becoming a musician, what is the main process? Well, guess what? It's exactly what I said. That whatever goes on in your mind in relation to musical theory, and then what you do with your body and indeed your speech on the basis of that musical theory is the very process that produces the musician you become. You can't argue with that, people. And we are geniuses at that in our world. We all understand that, but we don't say it like that. But you can't fault what I just said. And we know it, and we are geniuses at it. But as soon as we hear the Buddha say, I've got a method for how to help you become a happy person, you just hear he's going to punish you and reward you. It's like ridiculous. It's so emotional. It's so hysterical. It's so irrational. But that's how we hear it. And this is really, and also a point. In other words, we understand the main player in our becoming a musician and a cook and a cleaner and anything else is what we do, is we are the creator of that. We get that. No one is surprised. But the second we hear that Buddha says that we can produce our own happy person and we produce the suffering person, we get confused because we believe totally it all comes from the outside. We believe, it's almost as if we believe the main cause of being a musician is the piano. The main cause of being a musician is Bach, who wrote the music. The main cause of being a musician is your teacher. And you're basically saying, well, it's not my fault. It's Bach's fault. It's Steinway's fault for making a good piano. Nothing to do with me. I didn't play any role at all. I mean, that's schizophrenic, isn't it? But that's how we believe when it comes to happiness and suffering. We believe we have this completely deluded view, which comes from ego grasping and attachment, that we are this innocent victim who got made by some other clever person out there. I mean, a creator is a conspiracy theory, basically. And that's how we all live. We've got this dualistic view that we have conspiracy theories. One is it's a creator, or it's a devil, one or the other. We have these views, and it's a dualistic view. The Buddha's view is incredible. It's based on emptiness. That whatever we think and we do and we say is the process that produces the person I become. So the crucial point is, he is not telling us how to be the good musician. We've got plenty of people who can do that. We don't need that. His expertise is how to be a happy person and how to stop being a suffering person. That's the essence of it. That is the essence of it. So when you think of it that way, we should be so excited, So really, the obstacles in our mind are so tremendous, we can't even hear his teachings because we have this dualistic view driving our view, It's very fascinating to me. That alone is very fascinating. So, okay, Buddha's telling us we can be free of suffering. And another way of putting that is we can learn to be happy. So, of course, the final state of what he means by happiness is having a mind of a Buddha, a mind that's free of all the neuroses and full of all the wisdom and happiness. That's what a Buddha is. And all his methodology is how to help us become that. That's it, that's the essence of it. So the very first level of practice is merely to refrain from negative actions. As we advance, we can start to actually practice positive actions. But sort of like you got to pull out the weeds first, before you can start growing the flowers. Okay, so then we create, everything we think and do and say produces the person we become. So given that I want to be a happy person, please, bare minimum, forget Buddhahood, forget bodhicitta, forget nirvana, forget all that. Just even, if we take the view of a future life, which of course is Buddha's fundamental point, our mind comes from the past and it goes into the future. His observation is that it's beginningless and endless, energy. And in Buddhist teachings, there are various views on this, but this is the view of our lamas, of the Prasangika view, the Madhyamika, Prasangika, Madhyamika view, that mind is necessarily beginningless and endless. And if you follow the logic through, if there's no creator, and if you're not coming from your mummy and daddy, there's no other option. It has to be this. But basically, this mind of ours has this marvelous potential to be free of suffering and its causes, is what he's telling us. So even just to want to be a happier person, even just want to continue to, even if just, forget nirvana, forget bodhicitta, forget Buddhahood, even if you just want to continue to have a healthy body, if you want to continue to have people like you and not lie to you and be kind to you and not steal from you, and you continue to have a nice environment in which the food is delicious, even just this much, in other words, more of what we've got in this life, then he's giving us the methods of how to do that. Just that alone should be inspiring to us. That Buddha has found methods to have a happy, healthy body with a happy, healthy mind and a delicious environment and people who like you and are nice to you and have money in the bank. Just simple things. I mean, ordinary, simple things. Buddha's telling us how to cause that. So basically, it's the first cause is not even to do something, not even to proactively do a positive thing, but it's to proactively refrain from negative things, which itself is a very powerful positive action. So he's got his little list of 10 don'ts. The first 7 are actions of the body and the speech, and basically these are the heaviest ones in both good and bad because they impact upon others. So his very first level of recommendation to us as a good doctor, just like the doctor would recommend you not to smoke. Why? Not because she tells you not to smoke, and not because she's going to punish you with cancer, but because she says it'll cause you suffering. So Buddha's the same. He's recommending we don't kill and we don't steal. First 3 actions of our body. Don't harm. Broadly speaking, the first 7 are not harm others. And the first 3 are with our body. So don't kill, the very heaviest one. Don't jump on the wrong partner, which is an action usually driven, intense action, usually driven by, we can see that by attachment. And don't take what's not been given to you. Just 3 little things. He recommends refraining, consciously, intentionally refraining from these actions. And even better, is to refrain from them in the framework of living in vows of not to kill, not to steal, and not to practice sexual misconduct. So there are 2 really potent ways to make these actions very, very intense and really productive and really worthwhile. One is to purify the past actions, and this is what we're discussing here. And then the other one is to live in vows. These are the 2 most powerful methods. And Lama Zopa teaches these in great depth and with great enthusiasm. And and this is what I try to do too. In general, Buddha's recommending we stop killing and stop stealing and stop lying. But when we understand the way we create karma, and we'll go into this, then it's very evident the most powerful way to create as much of this karma as possible is to do it in the context of living in vows and then to do the practice of purification every day. So the Buddha's point is this, that basically every millisecond of what our mind is doing, every millisecond of what a mind does, every millisecond, it's just that alone, forget following it through with actions of body and speech. Every millisecond of what a mind is doing is dropping seeds into that mind, is imprinting in that mind the tendencies of those very thoughts. That's the first one. And then when you follow those thoughts through with actions with your body and your speech, then that puts extra powerful imprints in the mind. So one tiny thought of being generous is an inconceivably brilliant thought. And then you follow through by putting your hand in your pocket and taking out 20 euros and giving it to a poor person. That multiplies the power of that action inconceivably, right? So now that's one action in itself. Now, the Buddha would say, and this is the point about vows, if you are living in a vow, okay, you don't have a vow to be generous. You have there are two things. Mainly, you have a vow to refrain from things, and this is the main discussion here. But then you have also a commitment to do things. You have a vow to refrain from things, and then you have a commitment to do things. And the practice of morality here, at the very first level, is the morality of refraining from harming. And even all the vows of the Pratimoksha, and even the vows of the Bodhisattva, they are all the morality or the ethics of the energy of refraining. So this is a huge component of practice, is this strong decision to refrain from doing certain actions. It seems very abstract and rather kind of passive. I must not do this. I must not do that. And sometimes that's why we hear it in a very punitive way. But I always point this out, and I want to point it out again here, that we live our lives like this. You know, when you just learn to drive a car, if you had to write down every tiny thing you decided to refrain from doing just to learn to be a good driver, it would be hundreds. We never think of it this way. We never think of it as a vow because we hear it in the punitive way. But you know very well when you're learning to drive a car, you learn I will never put the foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. You learn it from the first second you get in a car. And if you don't remember that, you're going to blow the car up. So you learn that so deeply and it's so ingrained in your mind. That is what a vow is. It's a decision based on logic that you of wanting to become a good car driver, that you will never put the foot on the brake at the same time as the accelerator. And I'm not being sarcastic, I'm not joking here, but we just so take it for granted. We never think of it like this. So there are things that you do, you vow to not do many, many things, and then you also promise that you will do certain things. And this is exactly what we're discussing here in terms of what, instead of producing a good car driver, here we are trying to produce a happy, productive, wise, compassionate person. That's the methodology. So it's not the logic, the terminology we're using here is very sounding like religious, yes. But that we give it this punitive way of hearing it, which is our mistake. So there are many things that this one of vows, and there are certain things, only 5. When you take refuge as a Buddhist, you know, then you might also take the 5 layperson vows. They are so, you can't, we should be in tears of joy every day, just realizing we have sat there in front of somebody, when we sat there with our hands in the prayer mudra, that person representing the Buddha to us, and after we took refuge, we then vowed, from today until the day I die, I will never kill, I will never steal, I will never lie. It is so blissful, you can't imagine it, because you're imprinting in your mind so powerfully that view. And so what that's doing, and then this is the difference, this is the point, because you've got the vow not to kill. Every second that you're keeping it, 24 hours a day, because it's right there next to you, you remember you've made this intense decision, I will never kill. You imprinted this concept deep into your bones. And so every second you're keeping that vow, even if you're not even thinking about not killing, 24 hours a day you're keeping that vow. 24 hours a day you're purifying your mind. You're putting atomic bombs under past tendencies to kill from countless past lives, and you're putting it, and you're radically counteracting the habit to kill, and you're strongly sowing seeds in the future to never kill, which will produce what? Just this one alone. What does non-killing produce? It guarantees that you will get another decent human body in your next life. 2, you will never have a thought to kill, not even arise in your mind from the time you're a tiny baby. 3, you will not get killed or die young. And 4, you'll have a delicious, healthy, handsome, beautiful body, and whatever you eat will nourish you. The air will nourish you. The water will nourish you. The 4 elements will nourish you, because these are the 4 ways that karma ripens: a type of rebirth, a tendency, an experience, and an environmental result. So merely living in a vow not to kill, 24 hours a day you're keeping it. 24 hours a day you are keeping it. You are completely purifying, radically purifying countless eons of past killing, totally programming your mind in only the wish not to kill, and producing these four results. So that's what's called a happy person. That's just not killing. Then not lying will bring its own results. Not stealing will bring its own results. So if you want to be rich and famous in your next life, rich so you can benefit sentient beings, then you don't steal. So having the vow not to steal 24 hours a day, it's in your mind, you're producing that result. This is the way to try and think about it and hear it, not just this punitive, oh, I shouldn't kill, I'm a naughty person, you know. It's powerfully, radically reconfiguring your human mind, you know. That's what these things are doing. So living in vows, we should be so delighted. I mean, living in vows 24 hours a day is inconceivable. Otherwise, if you don't, you see, not the power of vows is such that they even say it's like a subtle physical energy visible to clairvoyance. It sounds pretty cosmic, you know. But the power psychologically of this is so intense, is so extraordinary. Otherwise, the only time you create the karma of not killing, unless you do it in a vow, the only time you create the karma of not killing is when you intend to not kill, when you meet the mouse and you have compassion and you do the action and then the result comes. And that's not often in a day. Whereas if you have a vow not to kill, it's deeply in your bones, you know, so it's tremendously powerful. As Lama Zopa says, just being a good person is not enough. Vows have this incredibly beneficial psychological result. And I think if you analyze it, it's very logical, you know, because like you've decided, you sat there that day when you took refuge and took the lay vows, you've decided that you're going to live a life of not harming others, and this is the whole point that's important here, remember. The main beneficiary of that is you. What's beneath, what drives all of Buddha's instructions in the very first level of practice is that these are the methods to bring the result for oneself of being a happy person. As Lama Zopa says, yes, of course, the rats and the roaches will have a party, you just leave them in peace. But this is the part we really forget in our culture. The main reason at the very first stages that Buddha exhorts us not to kill and steal and lie isn't for the sake of others yet. It's for one's own sake, because we produce ourselves. So he says the best way to produce a happy person, Robina, is to not kill, not steal, not lie, because they are those opposite ones. They are the cause of suffering. If you look in the world at human beings, most human beings have a tendency to kill. I mean, most humans have a tendency to kill. Many humans get killed, don't they? And many humans are unhealthy. That alone, they are the three results in this life of past killing, because they haven't lived in vows. If you wake up in this life with no thought to kill, if you've got a handsome, healthy body, if you eat whatever you like and get healthy, if the environment is good for you, if no one kills you and harms you, it's because you've lived in vows in the past, you know. So this is just tremendously powerful logic if you think it through like this. And this is for your own benefit. Don't feel embarrassed about that. Don't feel ashamed about that. The very first level of Buddha's teachings is for our own benefit. That's his whole point. He's trying to give us methods of how to be happy. So living in vows. So then at the end of the day, to increase the purification you've already practiced all day by living in vows, you then do your purification practice, which brings these things to mind, you know, and there are four main steps there, we know. You first acknowledge, regret the things you have done that day, but in general, in countless past lives, those countless millions of karmic seeds that are there, you acknowledge you did kill. Let's say you killed the rat today, you know. So as you regret, you own the fact you killed the rat. And then you're thinking, well, who are all the other karmas I've created of killing in countless past lives, the billions of karmic seeds that are there. I regret these from the depth of my heart, because you know what, Robina? I do not want future suffering. I don't, in particular, want the suffering of the result of killing. No way I want to be born in the lower realms. No way do I want to be born with a tendency to kill. No way do I want to get killed. No way do I want to get sick. Be sick. I don't want that. So I regret killing. First step. Second one, you rely upon the doctor. Whom can I rely upon? Thank goodness to find a decent doctor who's got the methods that I can use to purify myself. So we have refuge. Then the second, you have compassion for those you killed. Third, you do the practice and purify and visualize and do the practice and imagine purifying your mind. And fourth, you make a decision not to continue to, you make a decision to continue to not kill. So these practices alone, living in vows and doing purification, is the absolute basis, and is the foundation and the basis of all future practice. Whether you want to realize Mahamudra, whether you want to become a tantric practitioner, whether you want to get bodhicitta, without this basis, you have no foundation. There's no basis without this. And so karma is tremendously powerful to understand and to be enthusiastic about, because it's the method of you producing yourself, So that's a summary and an overview. So now I'd like you to ask questions. And it's the first logical reason to prove emptiness. So be so happy. Questions now. Questions? Anybody? Wolfgang?
Hello, Venerable Robina. Could I
Hello,
please ask you a question about gratitude? When
Gratitude.
when
Yeah.
I'm producing myself, when I'm responsible for myself and my environment, why should I be grateful to anybody else? Everything I created.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the first point is, I think it's important. I mean, people talk about gratitude, and I understand your point exactly. But I think one of the points is if we take the view of karma and we realize that, if you realize that anything good in your life right now, you did it, so then you could only but have a real attitude of gratitude to the past you. In other words, if you look in your garden and you can see all the veggies and you can see all the roses and you can see all the herbs, you've worked at that garden for 10 years. You could argue you've got a real attitude of gratitude for all the hard work that you have done, which I think is a really good point. Be grateful for your own intelligence that you did all that. Look at this, and now you're getting the results of it. And that encourages you when you realize your own good work and be grateful to yourself. And I really mean that. Then you will only want to continue to grow, to continue to work on your garden. That's the first one. But the other one is one logical reason, Wolfgang, to have gratitude to others. It's a teaching on dependent arising. It's a teaching on dependent arising. Without the people who sold you those seeds in the little packet in the shop, without the people who wrote, who wrote the gardening books, without the birds, the little worms in the ground doing what they do, which gives you some nice soil, without all the countless things, all the dependent arisings of that garden every day, yes, you were the one who did it. You harnessed all that energy, but all those sentient beings and all those other things, my goodness, how grateful you are they did their work. You see my point? That's one good logical reason. You get my point, Wolfgang?
Yes, I hear the point, but
where's your doubt?
Yeah, it's the same. They are only there because I generated the root cause for it. At
Yeah,
the
but
end,
they're still there. But they're still there. Because they're still there. If your wife is kind to you, Wolfgang, it's because you've been kind to her.
yeah. So why should I be grateful to her?
Because she is kind back to you. How kind she is, and then that encourages you then to be kind to her again. So I mean, it's like, in other words, just because what you're doing is you're seeing the fact that you are the main person who did the work. You're seeing it as self-existent, which is not a dependent arising. You're seeing it as self-existent, and that's meaning that, of course, everything we do is dependent upon other things. So put it this way: karma is a brilliant example to, one, realize that you produce everything, but also looking at it from another perspective, it's a brilliant example of dependent arising, which means it's all the causes and all the conditions. So it's both things. Doing it, if you have only the view that I did it all, that only brings incredible arrogance and no awareness of anybody else, and you can do what you like with it. It brings a really wrong view, It doesn't, having kindness and gratitude to others just opens your heart. I mean, of course,
That's why I'm asking. That's exactly why I'm asking. Deep inside, I feel that gratitude is very, very important. But I see
That's
the
right.
collision. I see the collision with the karma teaching.
Yes, exactly right. There's no contradiction. It's really the two wings. The karmic one is the wisdom wing, the compassion one, and the gratitude to others is the compassion wing, and they both help each other.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you understand me?
Yeah.
And you see, if we had a Christian teaching, we'd be great because the universe comes from God, and we'd be grateful to God. And I know there's another view that often people have the view that we'll be grateful to the universe, but this one is grateful to yourself. And then the learning from that is I must continue to do it. And then also, because of all the dependent arisings, you're also grateful to others. I mean, because yes, you did create it, but you're grateful to others because the world is dependent arising. And this is bringing both compassion and wisdom. It brings both. If only the wisdom wing had become very hard-hearted, and it was only the compassion wing, it becomes a bit weak. We need both to strengthen each other. Do you understand? Does it make sense, Wolfgang?
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And the more we get the wisdom one, that lessens the division between self and other, which can only bring connectedness with others as well. I mean, you know, as Lama Yeshe says, or quoting Chandra Kirti, when you've realized emptiness, which is the wisdom wing, you've cut the division between self and other, you know. And so they eat. Compassion helps the wisdom side, and the wisdom side, which is karma, helps the compassion side, you know. Anyway, just talking. Yes, somebody else, please. Points.
Sylvia has a question in the Zoom chat. Would you like to ask Sylvia?
Good.
It was more a comment to what he said earlier. So if you don't have gratitude, you have a self-charging attitude.
A self-which?
Self-charging attitude.
No, it's
so,
true, isn't it? You mean gratitude to others.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have that, then you don't have a balanced.
Yeah.
I think you said that after I wrote it,
I think
actually.
it's a good point. No, it's a good point. But also, I think the other thing, you see, the other thing I think, Wolfgang and Sylvia also, I think this is it's not criticism, but it's a really, in our culture, for example, there's a very strong attitude of gratitude. Now, if you look at the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, you won't find one called gratitude. And that could surprise us. But I mean, I think the gratitude one comes very strongly. The evolution of it is coming very strongly from the Christian teachings of somebody giving it to you. And so I mean, gratitude is incredible. But the Buddhist one would be, instead of saying, why should I be grateful to others? It should be, grateful. Let me look at grateful. Okay, grateful. I'm grateful to others. Grateful. I mean, do we use that a lot? Grateful. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. Yeah, I mean, no, it's okay. I'm just thinking it out loud. Grateful. You walk into a shop and someone's kind to you. Would you say you're grateful? I mean, the Buddhist one would be that, I mean, I'm not saying not grateful, but if someone's kind to you, first you recognize it's the fruit of your own actions, your past kindness. And secondly, because you know they're a human being, so you want to be kind back. So it would bring more kindness. It would bring more compassion. It would bring more humility. You'd say those words. So the gratitude one is kind of interesting. I don't often think of it myself, frankly. And I'm just thinking out loud a bit here. The emphasis on it in our culture. The Buddhist one would be when Wolfgang's wife is kind to him, he knows it's the fruit of his own karma. He created the cause to meet a wife who's kind to him. And then because of that, he wants to be kind again because he wants to create more of it, because he knows he created it. But at the same time, he also knows she's a human being just like him, who also appreciates kindness. So there's a connectedness that comes. So I wouldn't say gratitude so much. But that's individuals think differently. I don't often use the gratitude one much myself in my life. It's an interesting point. Anyway, I'm just saying a few things out loud here. Thank you both of you for that. So who else? People, questions, anything you like, questions.
Ariella, did you have a question?
About karma, about anything?
Well, it wasn't really a question. Well, I had a question before, but Venerable did answer that in regards to the killing, that obviously it's also killing animals, all sentient beings. So the minute
Is that Ariella? So what was
Yes,
the question,
I'm here.
Ariella? What was the question?
Well, actually, you answered it in regards to killing. That
What was your question? What was your question?
that if killing also includes animals.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, the Buddha's view is you've been an animal in countless lives, you've been an insect in countless lives. And so, you know, if an insect has been a human and a human has been an insect, then why differentiate? You know, it would be a bit irrational, isn't it, from the Buddhist perspective? All sentient beings want to be happy. All sentient beings don't want to suffer, you know. So fundamental. Absolutely, Ariella. Yes, Joey.
Hi, Venerable. I was wondering at nighttime with purifications if I need to consciously think about being regretful for killing another lifetime and jumping on wrong partner and stealing. If I perhaps,
Yes,
yeah.
I hear absolutely good point. I mean, if we're taking the bigger picture, Joey, in the Buddhist view, which of course is hard for us, if we can imagine that our mind did exist in countless past lives, you understand my point? You understand? If you can take on that view, then it's totally logical. Because all those billions of everything you ever do or say or think goes into your mind and leaves seeds. So if we can think I've been you know, I just think if you've been a whale in one past life, think of a whale. It's a sentient being and just it opens its mouth for one mouthful of one breakfast in its 40-year life, and probably 40 million little sentient beings go into its mouth for one mouthful of one breakfast. That's a lot of killing. And you've done that action countless times, and those seeds are in your mind. So we need to put atomic bombs under all the seeds of any actions we've ever done since beginningless time. It's a very big view. It's a very spacious view to have. Do you understand, Joey?
I do. I was just thinking about like the purification, how
What, darling? What?
I was just thinking about with purification at nighttime that I haven't killed anything for the day or stolen or
Did you hear my answer?
what is it?
Did you hear what I said?
I did, but consciously think about those three things from past lives and feel some regret.
Yeah, of course you would. And so it's just like this. It's just like you've just discovered that, you know, this is simplistic. It's like discovering sugar creates diabetes. Let's just say you've discovered that. Do you understand me, Joey? And you just today you think, oh, I regret any sugar I ate because I don't want diabetes. But you know, your other 47 years before that, you've been eating sugar every day, and that was already taking its toll. So just for your own sake, it's also good to say, and any sugar I've eaten since I was born, of course I regret that because I don't want the future suffering. And that brings you to the next step of wanting to clean it up and purify it. And that brings you to the final conclusion, I must never eat sugar again. It's just, of course it is to bring it up. And you just to say the words, and I regret whatever I've done since beginningless time. Because you know what, Joey, you're talking to yourself. I don't want diabetes. I don't want future suffering. It's just good for the mind to think like this. Do you understand me?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Good.
All right, I'll add it. I'll add it at night. Thank you.
Okay. Who else, people?
No.
Anything else? Nothing. Hello, Kelly.
Sorry. So I have a quick question, and this is probably just from my confusion. It seems like when we're looking at emptiness and its relationship with dependent arising, it seems like to some extent this Dharmakaya mind is unconditioned, maybe free from dependent arising. I guess, long story short,
No,
are they
it's a good
mutually
point.
exclusive?
No, it's not. Well, according to, it depends on which teachings you're quoting from. What's your background, Kelly? Is it the Nyingma teachings, the Kagyu teachings, the Gelugpa teachings? What's your background?
My background is very limited.
Where
I've
have you
read
heard your teachings
Mahayana.
from? No, but which
But
Tibetan teachings have you heard your teachings from?
oh my goodness, I'm going to sound so stupid here. But I've just
worry.
been reading sutras
Oh, good,
and
darling, doesn't matter. It's perfect. Nothing wrong. I want to clarify. It doesn't matter, Kelly.
yeah.
So the teachings here, everything that exists, including hell realms, including an ant, including, you know, this computer, including you, including the Dharmakaya. If something exists, conventionally, then by definition, it is a dependent arising. That's an absolute assumption. Whatever
Okay.
exists, nothing is outside of dependent arising. Put it that way.
Okay.
That's essential, including emptiness itself, dependent arising itself. By definition, if something exists, if you can posit something as existing, it exists in dependence upon factors, which means it's a dependent arising because
So there was a
everything
seed.
is empty. You understand?
Okay. So that may have been cultivation. I guess I'm wondering, is it possible? So when we're having these cycles of consciousness, yeah, never mind that. I'm just going to be quiet and I'm going to think about what thank you.
Good, Kelly. Thank you, darling. Hello, Vivian. Hello, my dear. Unmute, sweetheart.
Sorry.
Unmute, darling. Vivian. Unmute, darling. Vivian, press your little button. Unmute.
I think she has no sound.
But she doesn't. What do you mean she got no sound?
I don't know. She mentioned
Unmute, Vivian. Can you unmute, darling? Say yes. You can't unmute. Why not? Oh, I'm so sorry. We'll write your question down and Lars will read it. Okay. Hello, Fernando. Happy to see you, darling.
Hello, dear Venerable Robina. My
Yes.
question is in relation to, well, apart from purification, I don't know if you remember that I told you that I was being harmed by spirits. And because
Yes.
of this harm, isn't it that we can repay what we did before, like in practices as chot?
I
Would
don't
it be
understand. You say
wise?
it again differently, what you're just asking. Say it again differently, Fernando.
Okay, I'm gonna say it again. When I was telling you about the spirits harming me, I thought, oh, well, there might be some Nagas because there are many Nagas in Mexico City center, historical center. But then some Naga friends from the Choginima Rinpoche told me, hey, there might be not Nagas, but Rakshas. And then Rakshas eat humans,
Hang on,
So I was
Fernando,
like,
Fernando, I'm really losing your point. Can you keep it not, don't go, there's no reason to say personal. Just ask the simple question. Ask the essential question. What's the question? Get it past your personal. Doesn't matter. What's the question?
the question is, apart from purification, we can do other practices for the harm that we receive to be reduced.
Say it a different way, Fernando. I missed a few. Just keep it really simple and ask the question. What's the question, Fernando?
Can everything be purified? Everything.
Okay.
Every single thing be purified?
Every tiny thing, any action we do, starting with our mind and then continuing with our body and our speech, leaves karmic seeds, tendencies in our mind. And because they are impermanent and because they are dependent arisings, therefore they can be changed. That's the entire logic of every practice in the entire Buddhist path from here to Buddhahood. It's a proof of why we can even become a Buddha. There's nothing set in stone. That's the answer. Is that the answer that makes it helpful?
Yes, it's very
Good,
helpful.
good,
Thank you
sweetheart.
very much.
Okay, good. Good. So what else, people? Yes, there we go. Haley.
Hi, Venerable. Good to see you. It's made. Tell me if it's too practical of a question, but I recently had an infestation of house flies coming from my house plants. So I've been trying to live within the vow of non-killing and not kill the flies. So just isolating the plants and leaving each plant in the bathroom for a few weeks for the flies to sort of live out their lives. But now I don't want the flies to come back. So my plan was to put tiny stones on top of the soil of the plants, but that's to stop them laying their eggs. But then I'm thinking, is that going to harm them because they can't lay their eggs, or am I overthinking?
Darling, I think what you're doing is exactly perfect. I mean, on the one hand, the world is pervaded by sentient beings. We can see this, we can see this totally. The world is pervaded by sentient beings. So we can see that it's impossible to stop them from coming on the one hand. So on the other hand, you know, and we can see even without intention, we harm many of them, we kill them. But what you're saying is you've gone to an incredible effort to try and not harm them. Well, this is stupendous. This is absolutely marvelous. And if you can do even actions that might prevent them from laying eggs, that's not killing them. That's totally fantastic what you're doing. And it's fantastic. So have a compassionate motivation and do what you can to try and have your garden and not harm the sentient beings. It's marvelous.
Okay.
It's marvelous. Nothing wrong. Go for it.
Thanks very much.
Good, darling. Hello, Vivian. Is Vivian still
So,
there? That's right. Well done, girl. Come on.
Thank you. I do alter permissions.
Come
Yes,
on to me.
lovely to see you. I have two questions. The first one is about purification. When we purify past actions, they are purified. When we go back and purify the next time, we continue to purify these past actions. Are they not purified, or is it to remind us of what we want to do in the future?
No, I think the best way to say it, Vivian, is that all of our negative actions are like 1,000-meter tall oak trees. And every day you purify, you're chipping away a little bit at the oak tree. And when you finally realized emptiness, that's when you uproot it. So every day you're chipping away. Put it this way. Every day you're chipping away. That's the point. You're chipping away not that particular action, but all those tendencies that are in the mind. You're chipping away every day. And finally, when you realize emptiness, that's when you purify at the root. That's the best way to
that's amazing. I can really visualize that. I can really work with. That's great. And just the second part was, yeah, I kind of had to kill, but I was in Nepal at Kopan and recently, and I came away with a parasite. Well, I obviously
a sentient being. They're sentient beings.
Yeah, it was a parasite, a living parasite, and I had to take some antibiotics to get rid of it.
Oh, it's a parasite, a sentient being. Is that what you're saying? A little bug, it's a creature.
Yeah.
Darling, listen, our body is pervaded by these sentient beings already. There's not an atom of your space where you're not going to find sentient beings. Under your armpit is said to be like a zoo. So in a way, we're killing them every time we walk and talk and eat and do everything. So the best thing is when we do take medicine, if it is going to harm the sentient beings in our body, you try and have as much compassion as possible and have a wish not to harm them and have a wish to try and be healthy. So you try and, not consciously trying to kill them. Don't think like that, because whatever we do is going to harm sentient beings whether we like it or not, even if you do nothing. Do you understand? It's just the nature of the world. So you just do your best to try and get healthy and not have an intention to harm or kill. And do you understand? Be very conscious of it and try and be conscious and aware as much as possible. And that's why doing purification every day purifies those tendencies, but also the purification practice. This is something good and important, Vivian, for you to know too. By also purifying all the different aspects of karma, we even purify even being harmed in the future. You might not meet parasites again. So purification isn't just to purify the tendency, but to even purify the beings even harming you. We'll even get to the point where we won't even need to take medicine because we won't get sick. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm.
Do you see that's good. Because there are four ways that our karma ripens. This is an important point. Are you clear? Okay, Vivian?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So there are four ways that our karma ripens. The first is a type of rebirth, meaning human, animal, etc. So in our case, we've got a human body, which means at the time of our past death, a very strong, non-killing karmic seed, as Lama Zopa says, probably practiced in the context of living in vows of not killing, was triggered before we even stopped breathing, which was the cause for our mind to go to our present mother's human fallopian tube once we died. But at the same time as that karmic seed being triggered before we even stopped breathing, all the other karmic seeds that produce the other three kinds of results, which would play out, which are playing out in this very life, they are also all triggered and all programmed already, all at that same time. And what are they? Well, the next set of karmic seeds that were triggered at that time are the seeds that have produced our own personality. I mean, we've got the human body. That came from mummy and daddy, no argument. We caused it with karma, but that came from our mother and father. But then the second way our karma is ripening is the very mental tendencies in this human body, the kind of mind we are born with. This is the result of our past karma too. So if we look into our minds and we see that we have a wish to not kill, to not steal, to not lie, to try and be ethical, to be a good person, which is how come we're sitting in a class like this. And this is not a, this class is not to, this is not, we're not trying to make guns in this class. So this is already the result of past tendencies to not kill, tendencies to lie, tendency to not steal. How amazing. That's why we're attracted to doing it again. What a miraculous thing. How incredible. The next way that our karma is playing out in this life, the seeds of which were triggered, at the time of our past death, are the karmic seeds that produce our experiences at the hands of others. So all the things that have happened to us in this life that have been good, nice people, the bank giving us credit, lovely wives, nice children, we take these for granted. This is the fruit of our incredible virtue, And then the bad things, that's the fruit of our non-virtue. Okay. And the fourth way that our karma is playing out is called environmental karma. Now, if we're still alive, it's because we've got environmental karma of non-killing. If we didn't get COVID when it came along, it's because we got the environmental karma of non-killing. If people, if we're fairly healthy and well, it's because we've got the environmental karma of non-killing. All of the way our karma is ripening. 1, our human rebirth. 2, our good tendencies. 3, our good results of experiences. And 4, the good environmental. This is the fruit of our past virtue. This is the fruit of our past living in vows. Now look at the rest of the world, being lied to, stolen from, raped, murdered, killed, abused, getting sick, living in agony. This is because of this is not being mean, because of not living in vows. Vows are tremendously powerful. Vows and purifying are the methods to get us ahead of the game, and to continue on our path to Buddhahood with a decent human body and a decent human environment and a decent human mind and good experiences. We need that so we can practice properly. This is the absolute basis. And this is junior school, first level of practice. Live in vows and purify. Any other questions? Hello, Kelly, you're there again. What happened to Kelly? She disappeared.
Sorry. Okay, so that triggered one more question. Is it possible? So when we're trying to live with right view and travel the path, is it possible that, I guess I'm just wondering, if our experiences are difficult, is it that our view is wrong in this lifetime, or could we be suffering from past karma? How do we know?
I think it's both. It can't be. I mean, listen, you look in your garden today, the quality of what's in there, part of it has got to do with, the amount of rain that came that maybe squashed up the roses. But the other one is that it's due to the past. You can't, it's both, sweetheart. It's both. It's past karma and the present. They all work out together.
Yes.
You see? So you work on.
Yeah.
Okay, good, darling. So, Natalia, talk to me.
Yeah, I was wondering with this part about gratitude, because I recently had this kind of talk that you cannot do certain things because I sacrificed things for you to have the things that you have now. And it's causes like I did not ask for that, and I'm like not grateful at all. I'm just angry with all this situation and how to deal with that.
No, I know. This is what happens, isn't it? I think if we are dumping on what you're suggesting is another person dumping it on you. This is what our poor mothers get upset, isn't it? I sacrificed my life for you, and then I didn't ask to get born. You chose it, so we have this awful argument, isn't it? So it's very different. A person demands that we be grateful. I mean, that's So I suppose that's a question of the relationship with that person and how much. I mean, that's a very dynamic. I mean, it's a very not an easy one to answer because, you know, we've all got these intense relationships. So if another person is dumping on us, it's very hard. So on the one hand, if you're compassionate and kind and patient, you can then say you're right and I am grateful. But if you feel like you're being dominated and bullied by this person, you've got to find out how you can respond. You know, it's up to you very much how dominant this person is in your life. I mean, the way you're asking that question indicates you feel a bit dominated by this person. Would that be correct?
Yeah, sometimes a bit. I know we usually get along, but this was kind of situation that it was emotional play a bit.
Of course, darling, it's difficult, and that can be and we can understand that. I suppose if we think about if we've done things for other people and they're not grateful, we get very hurt and upset. So we can see this person is obviously feeling that. So I suppose you understand it theoretically, but if you're feeling a bit fragile, then the best is at least don't say something. I mean, it can be misused very strongly. I agree with you. I agree. We have to be careful, don't we?
Yeah.
I agree with you, absolutely. So what else, people? Anybody other questions? 20 to 3. What time is it? Any other questions, dearest people? Nothing? No questions? Okay, so I think we could do a very short meditation practice on the purification. And why don't we do that? Very short, very simple. So just be very natural with it. We'll do it a very casual sort of little thinking. We'll do a bit of thinking, okay? So we'll do the first step. The first one is regret. So we'll just think, okay? Think. Any actions we've done in this life, today, this week, last week, we can see we've got certain tendencies. Maybe some of us shout, maybe sometimes we might lie, maybe we harm others, maybe we kill the mouse a bit easily, maybe a bit of killing, a bit of stealing, a bit of lying, whatever. If we do some of those things, just think very easygoing about it, this life or more recently. So think of some actions that are a tendency. Maybe you're mean to your boyfriend, maybe you upset your mother, just simple things that you think about that you've done, actions you've done to harm others, okay? So it's helpful to acknowledge them. So just think for a second, your own tendencies, and think even just this life, some things you've done. Maybe just think this life, some things you've done to harm others. Like maybe you used to fish. You know, I had an abortion when I was 23. I think of that. Certain actions, acknowledge to yourself certain actions that you've done with your body or your speech to harm others. Just acknowledge a few actions, types of things. And the attitude is, well, so then we think those things. So just think them now. Just think for a second, okay, to yourself. The actions you've done to harm others that you can remember. So to think, just think, well, sort of you're talking to yourself, really. This practice is like talking to yourself. Well, you think, well, I did do that. I did do that. I had the abortion when I was 23. I did do the fishing. I did do the killing. I did do the cheating. I did do the whatever I did. It's true, I did it. It's, instead of like this defensive hurt, it's not my fault. It's not, acknowledging to yourself, I did do it. And this is the point about regret. What that action did was drop a seed into your mind. So I dropped a seed into my mind of the tendency to kill. Yes, it's due to the karma of that baby who came running to my womb. They did. That was their karma to come to my womb. And it was even their karma by having killed me to have the thought, I will have an abortion. So it's a dependent arising. But I'm owning my part of it, okay? I'm owning my part of it. I did do it. And then I'm going to say to myself, this is the point about regret. You know what, Robina? I regret having done that. Why? I couldn't have done better. At the time, it's all I could do. But I regret having done that out of my ignorance. And I didn't realize I was going to leave a seed in my mind. I didn't realize I was going to put a tendency in my mind, and I don't want that. Why? Because I don't want the fruit to ripen. I don't want to have a lower realm rebirth. I don't want to have a tendency to kill. I don't want to get killed. I don't want to get sick. These are the results of killing. So you're saying to yourself, I regret it because I don't want those future results. It's completely like compassion for yourself. That's what regret is. It's like compassion for yourself. I regret these because I don't want the future suffering. That's a fact. Who wants suffering? Nobody. So it's owning that. And that's the basis of regret. Not guilt, not shame, not, oh, I shouldn't have done it. It's simply, I put those seeds in my mind, and you know what, Robina? I don't want them to ripen because you know what? I'm sick of suffering. That's really regret. So think like that. Because you don't want the suffering results, because everything you think and do and say does bring results to you. Forget about the world. And then think, and you know what? Anything I've ever done since beginningless time and countless past lives that has left seeds in my mind, they're all sitting there waiting to ripen. I don't want them to ripen. I don't want future suffering. So I regret them from the depths of my heart. Because you know what? I'm sick of suffering. I don't want future suffering, and I'm sick of suffering now. So I regret whatever I have done to cause my own suffering. Think like that. Talk to yourself. It's kind of a kindness to yourself. So let me think, well, whom can I turn to give me methods, like the medicine to take that will stop this suffering? So we turn to the Buddha. He's like our doctor, and that's the crucial thing. He's not our creator. He's not, you know, and that's the point, the Christian teaching, what purifies you is God's forgiveness. And that's, I think, our problem in our culture with forgiveness as well. We think for other people forgiving us gets us off the hook. No, that's very nice. Buddha would forgive you. He's a nice guy. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is we're relying upon the doctor because we want to take that medicine. So this is the methodology, basically, that Buddha's given us. So we're delighted. So we visualize Buddha above our head. If you know the Vajrasattva one, otherwise just visualize the Buddha sitting above your head. And the second part of the second step is now we have compassion for those we've harmed. Regret is like compassion for yourself. But now we have for those we've harmed. Why? Because we know what suffering is like. We know what it's like to be harmed, so we know what they feel like. So we're going to purify also for their sake, for my own sake and for their sake. So the third step is now we do the practice. We just visualize. Very simple. Visualize nectar coming from the Buddha, entering our crown and filling us completely, and imagining all the seeds we've left in our mind from any of the actions we've ever done with our body, speech, and mind since beginningless time that would ripen as our future suffering. We're going to purify it. Imagine this nectar filling us completely and eradicating, driving out all the karmic imprints, disappearing into space, all those karmic imprints, disappearing into space, as we say the mantra just 3 times. And if you don't know it, just visualize filling with nectar, purifying all those karmic imprints. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido me bawa Suto Shayo me bawa Supo Shayo me bawa Anorakta me bawa Sarvasiri me Prayasa Sawa Karma Sutsa me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarva Tatagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahung Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido me bawa Suto Shayo me bawa Supo Shayo me bawa Anorakta me bawa Sarvasiri me Prayasa Sawa Kama Sutsa me Siddham Shriyam Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tatagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhama Sama Sattva Ahung Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido me bawa Suto Shayo me bawa Supo Shayo me bawa Anorakta me bawa Sarvasiri me Prayasa Sawa Kama Sutsa me Siddham Shriyam Kuru Hong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tatagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajrabhama Sama Sattva Ahung Pe. So imagine full of this nectar, all the imprints of all the seeds we've ever put in our mind from beginningless time, all the acts we've ever done to harm others, including even the delusions. Imagine, totally purified. But imagine too that this is the process that creates the karma of purifying the very actions we did. As Lama Yeshe says, you know, we create negativity with our mind, so we purify it by creating positivity with our mind. This is the very process that purifies negative karma. It's not as if, you know, we're not like bad set in stone. There's no karmic input we can't counteract. So be delighted. This regretting, this compassion, and now this visualization, what's purifying us. And now the fourth step is the determination not to do it again because we're sick of suffering. No way am I going to do it again. So we make a strong decision. I'm going to keep my vows. I will not kill. I will not steal. I will not lie. They're the main ones. Keep those. And do your best not to be bad-mouthing your husband and bad-mouthing your kid. You won't say, I will never do that again. Maybe you say for 24 hours, I won't do it. You make a decision, you know. So that's the four opponent powers: regret, reliance, which includes compassion, the remedy, and then the resolve to change. This is it. This is the very process that reverses negative karma. It's very logical, psychologically logical. So be delighted. This is 10 minutes, a 10-minute process, you know, your mind engaging in these four steps. Be delighted. So this is also the point. Regret specifically purifies the karma called experiences similar to the cause, all the bad things happening to you. Regretting killing purifies you getting killed. Regretting lying purifies you being lied to. The second one, compassion and the refuge, that purifies environmental karma result. The third one, experience the purification itself, the visualization of the Buddha and the mantra, that purifies the lower realm result. And the fourth one purifies the habit. So this purifies all aspects of karma, you know, because there's no karma we can't change. There's no karma that's set in stone. It's all to do with our mind. As Yeshe says, the power of purification is the power of regret, the power of the refuge and compassion, the power of the remedy, the power of resolve. It's our mind creates karma and our mind purifies it, okay? So the more determination, the more conviction, the more confidence, the more clarity, the better the result. So be delighted. That's it. Okay. All right. It's 10 minutes to go, but I think it's enough. Unless there's any more questions, urgent ones, that'll do, I think, for New Year. Ready for New Year. So just make, I mean, you know, New Year, every day is the same day, every year reset, but use it as a time just to sort of re-energize ourselves, to keep on moving, to remember we create ourselves, to have confidence in ourselves, gratitude to ourselves, gratitude to others. All of it, nothing wrong. Keep moving, keep practicing. Let it all unfold, knowing that you're a work in progress, and be delighted with it and have confidence and never give up and never give up and never give up and never give up and never give up, okay? Jang chob sem chog rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyu chi ke pan yam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pa ba shog. And may the Lamas of Rinpoche come back very soon. I was in Kopan a year ago. Kopan recently. And apparently Kandrila, a year ago, Kandrila, she told somebody that she had a dream. It was a year ago, in which Rinpoche appeared to her and said he was very happy where he was. And she said she saw mountains. She doesn't know where the mountains were. So it sounds like he's reborn already, but he's in the mountains. So it sounds like he's a boy. And if he's in the mountains, it could be Switzerland. We don't know. But it's probably Nepal. Who knows? And that's one story. And the other one is, what else? So there's no more news than that. So may he come back soon quickly and teach us all, so we can continue to receive his teaching, so we can become like him. Okay. Thank you, darling people. So kind of it.
Thank you, Venerable Robina, for another year with your presence.
Thank you, Venerable.
Teachings. Much appreciated. Much love to you.
Okay, thank you, people.
Everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Lars and Tara.
Bye, Venerable.